You know, one of the things we've tried to do over the course of this pandemic is to learn from the real life experience and the research of others. And the real life experience and the research with respect to schools is overwhelming at this point that schools are not spreaders. The kids in schools are not spreaders of COVID. I mean, there's no better example of that right now than the parochial schools in Massachusetts. They have 28,000 kids, 4,000 employees who have been back in-person learning since the middle of August, and they have a handful of cases. And if you look at the number of kids and faculty who are in either hybrid or in-person learning in our public schools in Massachusetts, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who have now been back in school, either on a hybrid or an in-person basis now for a couple of months, and we have 150, 160 cases out of a denominator that's in the hundreds of thousands. There are research reports. NPR did a terrific report on this just recently, where they gathered data from a series of pretty big longitudinal studies that have been done on schools around the world. And the basic conclusion was schools are not a major source of transmission. And I would hope, which is one of the reasons why we've said, you know, look at the data. Look at the data in your own community. It's why we talked yesterday, and you'll see this in the report that comes out today, about creating asterisks for communities that went red because of a very particular incident in their community. You know, a nursing home, a jail, something like that, a hospital. Why we've said since the beginning that you really ought to look at 3 weeks worth of data, 4 weeks worth of, 3 weeks of reports, 4 weeks of data, before you draw conclusions about what's actually going on in your community. But there's very little evidence that schools are a spreader.
Should Boston jump the gun, though, with this?
Look, our goal is to try to be supportive and helpful to our colleagues in municipal government. And, you know, I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback this stuff, but I think it's really important that as we get more familiar with this, and it's not just here in Massachusetts, but in other states as well. I mean, I talk to governors in other states in the region on a pretty regular basis. People are not finding schools, K through 12 schools, to be a big issue with respect to spread. And if you look at our colleges and universities, I mean, we're testing a lot more than they're testing in other places. And I think that routine testing on a lot of our colleges, which we put together with the Broad Institute and all the rest, has had a very positive impact on positive test casing. Even, I mean, our colleges and universities aren't seeing the massive increases in positive cases that people were talking about either. And most of the stuff that's involved spread there has happened off campus in, you know, gatherings that have taken place where familiar people are behaving in a familiar way.